Good morning. We're at Blue Oak Affordable Tree Solutions, LLC. There's Nathan this morning getting gear ready. Nathan will be cutting down 2 giant tulips today in excess of 100 feet.
Hang on, Joe. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to clarify what this video is and what it is not. This is a video showing people how we cut down 2 large tulip trees, and is filled with great tips along the way. This video is not a sufficient training tool for beginners to start cutting large trees on their own without qualified mentorship and supervision. Before we do anything to a tree, we inspect it from top to bottom and the surrounding area to identify hazards. Hazards include, but are not limited to, nearby electrical lines or structures, other trees that may interfere with the objective, cavities or cracks in the trunk, broken, dead, or hanging branches in the crown, buried root collar, basal rot or girdling roots, beehives or other wildlife, vines, or poisonous plants. We assessed these 2 trees thoroughly prior to entering the work area. Sorry, I just had to mention this because we forgot to get it on camera.
Had nails all in both trees. Used the metal detector to remove the nails. Got some good photos of that.
Today we got some really big trees to fell. They've got a lot of metal in them, so we're actually showing up on this job with some tools we don't normally need to bring. A drill, a nail puller, and a little metal detector.
Yeah.
Can we save the nails too? That way I can just show how many are in the...
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Well, there's a couple I've already pulled out, but yes.
I mean, really, this is like higher than what my notch is gonna be, but might as well just get it out while I'm here so that somebody else doesn't cut through it. I mean, there's 3 of them right there. They tried to put a tree house in this tree. If you know there's nails in the area where you're gonna be cutting your notch, it definitely can help to swipe it with a metal detector first.
There'll be a backhoe operator on site to assist in the pullover.
But we're gonna try to do it with no backhoe.
You heard
Try
it.
to do it with just wedges. We'll have a rope for safety.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
There we go. Okay, when I'm doing a pull, when I'm using a stick to support me with a throw line, I do a munter hitch in the throw line. And I take a nice beefy little stick. And the thing about a munter hitch is it'll kind of keep coming up with me. It's easy to adjust. It's a lot easier to adjust than like a clove hitch would be. Anyway, now when I'm ready to do my really hard pull, I'm gonna lock it off a couple by wrapping it and wrap an X on itself. And then I'll just give it a firm yank over that crotch. And we're over. The reason we opted for a running bowline in this case was for length of rope. Admittedly, a base tie does provide better mechanical advantage and in some ways is more secure because the rope goes down the entire stem of the tree or around multiple branches. But in this case, our tie-off point was so high up that a base tie would have used up too much rope and the track hoe operator would have been too close to the falling tree. So we wanted more rope. We wanted the full length of our rope in this case. So we used a running bowline. You got to be careful the branch that you select in these cases. A track hoe, for example, could easily have ripped that limb off without even realizing it. Okay, now I want to talk about taking measurements for the fell. Choose where you want the tree to land and decide whether it is a safe location based on the tree's height and lean. To measure height accurately, use a stick, axe handle, or other tool that is straight and as long as your arm is fully extended. I'm using a soil probe in this video. I'm standing in line with my intended felling direction. I extend my arm and lay the soil probe backwards towards my face and find the distance where it touches the corner of my eye or orbital bone. Do this first to set your measuring tool, axe handle, stick, or what have you, to the proper length. In this case, the tree is on higher ground than I am, so my arm is angled up. But if you're just learning this technique, I recommend practicing on level ground and keeping your arm level. Okay, so keeping my arm fully extended, I grasp the probe firmly and stand it straight back up, now with my arm still extended and my hand at the right spot on my probe. I raise or lower my hand to the base of the tree. I like to see the knuckle of my thumb about even with the base of the tree. I keep my hand at this level and I'll either walk forwards or backwards until the top of my probe is even with the top of the tree. Check out the bottom white line in this frame. It is the line of sight from my eye over my hand, looking right to the base of the tree. The top line is from my eye, looking over the top of my probe and making sure I'm lined up with the top of the tree. Again, on level ground, my arm would be level and my probe would be straight up and down. In this case, I'm compensating for the difference in elevation between my location and the tree's location. Here is another angle showing the same thing. Note the white lines in this frame. Together with the tree, they make up an imaginary right-angled triangle. That's how this trick works to predict with accuracy where the tree will land. After height is measured, take account of tree lean. Draw an imaginary oval around the full crown while standing where you want the tree to fall. A plumb line through this imaginary oval to the base of the tree will tell you the tree's side lean. You can correct minor to moderate side lean with basic techniques such as compensating the aim of your notch, using wedges to support the leaning side, and leaving a thicker hinge on the side opposite the lean. Trees with severe side lean or even moderate side lean towards high-value targets should be climbed and weight reduced on the lean side, or otherwise a swing rope must be installed. This is an advanced technique not covered in this video. After accounting for side lean, walk 90 degrees to either side of the tree and take lean information one more time to identify forward or back lean. Forward-leaning trees are very dangerous for barber chairs because the wood fibers are under strain before the back cut can be completed. Large forward-leaning trees should be plunge cut, otherwise known as bore cut, which is what I will demonstrate in this video. Ironically, back-leaning trees are usually safer to deal with than forward or side leaners. This is because their lean does not excessively stress the hinge or trunk fibers during the back cut. Make sure to use wedges, however, or your saw will get stuck as the tree sits back. Back-leaning trees that have little to no side lean can be managed with wedges and pullover ropes. Obviously, the more weight in a back-leaning tree, the more power you will need for pullover. The first tree I cut in this video has forward lean, the second one has back lean. Alright, now we're ready to inspect our saw and start the cut. When cutting my notch, I start with my top cut first. The two important elements of the top cut are aim and cutting angle. First, I want to mention cutting angle. Note the white lines in the frame. They represent a decent cutting angle. The steeper your cutting angle, the more open your notch will be. This is important because the more open the notch is, the longer time it has to close before the hinge breaks. A minimum of 70 degrees open is recommended. A notch that is only 30 or 45 degrees open, as shown by the red lines, may feel easier to cut, but the tree hasn't fallen very far by the time it closes. When the notch closes, the hinge breaks, and you lose control of the fell. Shallow notches may work for straight up and down trees, but they are not considered best practice. In cases of heavy back leaners, a shallow notch might even close by the time you've pulled the tree to a straight up position. This is an extremely dangerous situation. So we like to make a habit of open face cuts, which start with a good steep cutting angle. All right, now that we've covered cutting angle, we're going to move on to aim. When aiming, start behind the saw. This is really important. You want to be behind your saw and use that felling sight. You can see my cone out there. I'm looking straight down my felling sight, just a little bit to the right of the cone, but in line with the cone, so the tree will land on the cone. I really get behind that felling sight so I know I'm aiming my top cut the right direction. Okay, let's talk about where to stop your top cut. As you're following a good steep cutting angle, you're going to go deeper and deeper into the trunk of the tree. You want to stop before you get to a third the depth inside the tree. But what that's going to be, if you look straight on, it's going to look like 80% of the diameter. If you were to draw a line from one corner of your notch, of your top cut rather, to the other corner of your top cut, across should be 80% the total diameter of the trunk as you're looking straight at it. Again, this is not going in a depth of 80%. You don't even want to go past a third when it comes to that, but it's just looking straight on. And this kind of sets your hinge up in the best part of the trunk, in the good living sapwood, which is more fibrous and is going to give you better control and less chance of breakage. The only exception to this, of course, is if there's a cavity or some other defect that changes where you decide to put that hinge. And I suppose if you're trying to saw lean deliberately into the tree, you might go deeper on purpose. But for this video, we're not going to go over that really. So we're going to line up the bottom cut. Let's move on to lining up the bottom cut. Since we started with our top cut, we can look through it like a window, and you can actually see the tip of your bar as it comes across from corner to corner. You can see right there that I actually do just a little bit of a bypass by accident, but luckily I was able to spot it before going too deep with it. I was paying more attention to make sure people were videotaping me than I was watching for that like I normally do. Anyway, I get that notch out of there, and you can see I've got a little bit of a bypass. I have to clean that up, so I'm going to just sort of carve away at it carefully not to make another bypass go in the other direction. I just lay my bar across the back plane of that notch face, and it comes out pretty easily. That's still not good enough, so I'm gonna do it a little bit more. Just whittle a little bit more out of there. Be careful, make sure your chain tension is good while you do stuff like this. That is what a finished notch should look like. Nice, clean apex. Before I go into the back cut, we need to go over escape routes. The day that we shot this footage, I forgot to include escape routes as part of the instructional material, and so I'm going to use footage from another job to demonstrate this important part of the felling process.
When felling trees, probably the most important safety consideration is to have a predetermined escape path. Ideally two. One is a primary, one is a backup. Your escape routes need to be at 45-degree angles going backwards away from your intended direction of fell. So if I'm going to intend to fell this tree in line with the rake handle here, then I've got 45 off of that, going either this way or that way. The reason why it's not a good practice to go straight backwards is because in the event of barber chairs, the tree, imagine both my arms as one trunk. If the tree barber chairs, that's when half of the fibers just break out, but the other half stay standing. And then notice that my elbow, simulating the base of the tree, goes all the way out to here, and then if it fractures off and tears, it falls straight as such. So if a sawyer was standing directly behind the tree and tried to escape going straight backwards, he's in a higher zone of risk for that split piece to fall and hit him. The other important thing about your escape routes is to make sure that they're clear and free from obstructions. It's really easy to get in a rush and just want to fell your tree and get it on the ground, but take the time to reduce tripping hazards, to clear a path, so that in the event that you do have to get away, you don't have to worry about stumbling on anything. So I'm just going to use a rake in this case and try to get some of this debris back. I'm going to move this mini skid out of the way. Now I only need to get back about 15 feet, assuming that there's nothing overhead that, you know, that could domino effect. You know, obviously we inspect before felling the tree, but in this case, you need to just get at least 15 feet away. Stumps can bounce. People have been hit by stumps because they're standing too close and the thing bounces up and knocks them out, you know, but also like hangers above could get dislodged as this falls into them. They could come down. So the further you get away, the better, especially with a full crown in a crowded forest scenario.
Watch this demonstration of how I move away from the tree as it begins to fall. I apply the chain brake with one fluid motion as I pull the saw out of the back cut, and then I calmly move down my predetermined escape route to get a safe distance away as the tree falls. Alright, with that point covered, now we can get back to felling our large tulip trees. Okay, now we're going to plunge. Because it's got forward lean, we don't want to have the risk of a barber chair as it begins to fall. If we're doing a traditional back cut, it could be under tremendous strain before I am able to set my hinge. It could actually split the trunk, and that's what a barber chair is. So with these forward leaning really big trees, I do the plunge or bore cut. Now this one was just my 36-inch bar was just enough to get through it, but once I'm through from the other side, I kind of go to the other side and I set my hinge, and then I clear out all the middle wood, which again is where that it's taking away the potential for that barber chair. Okay, clearing out all that middle wood after I've set the hinge thickness that I want. I slowly work my way back, and I'm going to leave a little bit on the back, and that's called a back strap. Here I am setting my hinge on the other side. Just making sure it's all cleared out, and I'm going to set a little bit of a back strap. That's actually a lot of a back strap. I didn't need to leave it that much. I put some wedges in on the side that's got a neighboring house just for safety, and then I come out the back of my back strap to release the tree, put the chain brake on, and move away as it's falling. There's what my hinge looks like. You can see there was rot in there, but left a thick enough hinge. Anyways, check my chainsaw tension one more time before doing the next one. Now the next one did have enough weight in the back of it for me to install that rope in the beginning. Okay, so I'm just gonna go over this again with the second tree. You see me getting behind the saw initially to look down my felling site, and then I can just concentrate. Once I've got the cut started, I can sort of just watch it and concentrate on how deep I'm going, make sure I've got a nice steep cutting angle, stop once I'm about 80% across the diameter of the trunk from corner to corner. That bottom line was a mark that I put in because the metal detector was picking up metal that was underneath the bark that we couldn't get. So it was just to make sure I didn't hit that. But anyway, I'm looking through the window of my top cut, and this time I'm able to make a nice, much cleaner notch. Okay, plunge cut, same as before. When I'm plunge cutting, I stand off the hinge pretty good so that I don't accidentally cut through the hinge while I'm trying to bore through. There's a technique to plunge cutting. It's not that hard once you get used to it. You just have to start with the pulling side of the tip of your bar. Do not start with the pushing side. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of kickback. Anyway, set the hinge on one side and start going backwards to establish a back strap. So I set the hinge on both sides before I start going backwards and clearing all that wood out from the center. Then I'm gonna kind of come across and do my back strap. Now I will say I learned a good lesson on this one, and I'll explain that more once I have a frame of the stump to show it. But I start putting wedges in because I know that this one is kind of back leaning, and I was determined to not use the track hoe for assistance. And this is where I made a mistake. I am used to doing this technique of coming over my wedges after a plunge cut. And you can do this when the tree is forward leaning, and it will release the tree no problem. But this time, since the tree is kind of sitting back, I was nervous of it pinching my chainsaw bar. For good reason, because that's exactly what it does later. But you can see that I bailed out a little early before I've successfully cleared that back strap enough. And I'm trying to pound wedges in, and it's not going anywhere because they're just hitting the lip of that snap cut, so to speak. They're hitting, a dead stop in the wood because I haven't lined up the back cut perfectly. So I sort of blocked myself with the wedges. Then I tried to come over the wedges with my with the back strap release. Thinking about it now, what I really should have done was just remove that wedge entirely and then taken this wedge and bumped it over to here, and then I could have had the space to come in with my saw and just kind of clear out the cut without running the risk of it sitting back on me. But as it was, I decided to just cut a little deeper through with that technique of coming above my wedges. Again, that works perfectly well when the tree is forward leaning, but because it's back leaning, you see I almost get my saw pinched in the process.
Yep. There we go, hit it. No, it's wedging in there.
Despite that sort of sloppy mistake, I still was not in any dangerous position. The tree had plenty of hinge wood and was being supported well by the wedges on the side. And I was still able to wedge those guys in there. I will say that if you alternate striking your wedges, it really helps, because as one is bearing the load, the other one is freed up to get pounded in a little further. So once I started alternating them back and forth, the tree really started to lift.
It's going.
Yep, all right, clear out.
What out. Move back, Joe.
I got it.
Oh, all right.
So this one was back leaning, and we did overcome it with just wedges. We had the rope for safety, but we didn't use it.
Okay, so you can hear me trying to save face there in the aftermath of realizing that I kind of goofed up. But anyway, I attempt to explain what went wrong or what I thought went wrong, but truthfully, I was kind of had a lot of adrenaline pumping, so I wasn't able to really give it as much thought as I should have. So, I'm going to outline this with the stump, and it's going to make a lot better sense, I hope, for some of you guys to learn from my mistake. Okay, so let me talk about my plunge cut. I plunged in, and I did that part pretty well. Then I set the hinge. This is what setting your hinge might look like with your chainsaw. and you kind of clear out back to a back strap. Now there's the back strap. That's what the back strap, that's about the size and thickness that it should be on a stump like this. So clear it out to that side and then set a wedge in. But don't pound it in all the way because you don't want to hit it as you clear out the other side. So to clear out the other side, set a wedge in. Don't pound it in all the way. Then clear the back strap and the tree will rest on the wedges. At that point, you can pound the wedges in alternating and the tree will go over much more smoothly. That's how I wish I had done it, but you live and learn.
All right, guys, another successful cut by blue oak. And just for the record, tips landed right on the cone, right where he said they were. Great job.